Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. The studio lights were softer that morning, almost reverent, as if they sensed something fragile hung in the air. Kelly Ripa sat in her chair, shoulders squared as always, her smile practiced and warm, but her eyes told another story. To the millions watching at home, it looked like any other episode. To those who truly knew her, it was the calm before a confession. For weeks, rumors had swirled. Mark Consuelos' sudden emotional goodbye, captured in grainy phone videos, whispered about in tabloids, dissected endlessly online, had left fans confused and worried. Why now? Why the tears? Why did a man known for his confidence, humor, and unshakable presence look like he was saying goodbye to more than just a role? Kelly stayed silent until she couldn't. She took a breath that morning, fingers trembling slightly as she rested them on the desk. "There are moments," she began, voice steady but thin, "when life asks you to choose between what the world sees and what your heart can survive." The room went still. Mark's farewell, she explained, wasn't planned. It wasn't a career move, a contract dispute, or a dramatic reinvention. It was the result of something far more human, far more painful. It began quietly, months earlier, in the early hours before sunrise, when the house was still and the world felt manageable. Kelly noticed Mark waking earlier than usual, staring at the ceiling, breathing as though he was counting something invisible. He laughed it off at first. "Just thinking," he'd say, flashing that familiar grin. But thinking turned into pacing. Pacing turned into sleepless nights, and sleepless nights turned into a realization neither of them wanted to face. Mark was exhausted, emotionally, spiritually, profoundly. For decades, the couple had lived in motion. Early call times, late-night rehearsals, red carpets, scripts, interviews, endless expectations. They built a life others dreamed of, raising children amid chaos, carving out love in stolen moments, and through it all, they leaned on each other, believing that together they were unbreakable. But strength, Kelly admitted through tears, can sometimes become a burden. "He never complained," she said, her voice cracking. "He carried everything. He carried us." The truth surfaced one evening after a charity event. Mark, impeccably dressed, charming as ever, smiled through handshakes and cameras. But in the car ride home, the silence was deafening. Suddenly, without warning, he pulled over, and he cried. Not the quiet tears of sadness, but the gut-wrenching sobs of someone who had held it together for too long. "I don't know how much more I have," he whispered. That moment shattered something between them, not their love, but the illusion that love alone could protect them from everything. Doctors called it burnout, therapists called it emotional fatigue, Kelly called it fear. Because when the man who had always been her rock admitted he was drowning, the ground shifted beneath her feet. Mark's tearful farewell happened days later at a small gathering meant to celebrate a professional milestone. Friends noticed immediately, his voice wavering, his eyes glassy, his words heavier than the occasion required. When he hugged colleagues goodbye, it felt final, personal, and it was. What fans didn't know was that behind the scenes, Mark had made a decision that broke his heart and Kelly's too. He was stepping back from work, from commitments, from the relentless pace that had defined his life, not to quit forever, but to heal. Kelly confessed that she fought the decision at first, not out of selfishness, but fear. "I was terrified," she admitted, terrified of what slowing down would mean, terrified of facing what we'd been outrunning. The farewell wasn't scripted. The tears weren't performative. They were the release of a man who finally allowed himself to admit he needed help. But the hardest part, the part that truly broke Kelly, was the guilt Mark carried. "He kept saying he was letting everyone down," she said, wiping her cheeks. "I had to look at him and say, 'You are not a machine. You're allowed to be human.' At home, the shift was immediate and disorienting. Days slowed, mornings stretched. The noise of ambition gave way to the quiet of reflection. Mark began therapy. Long walks replaced gym sessions. Phones were turned off. For the first time in years, they sat together without an agenda. And that's when another truth
surviving,
emerged.
not living. Kelly spoke candidly about the toll of always being on, the expectation to smile, to inspire, to perform happiness even on days when it felt impossible. People think because we laugh on TV our lives are light, she said, but joy takes work, and sometimes we forget to do that work for ourselves. Mark's farewell symbolized more than stepping away. It was a refusal to disappear emotionally, a decision to choose presence over praise. The backlash came quickly. Headlines speculated. Critics questioned his commitment. Some called it weakness. Kelly addressed them directly, her eyes blazing with protective fire. If choosing your health is weakness, she said, then we need to redefine strength. She revealed that the night before Mark's farewell, they sat on the kitchen floor, backs against the cabinets, hands intertwined. No cameras, no scripts, just truth. "I'm scared," admitted Mark. "So am I," replied Kelly. But they promised each other something radical, honesty without heroics. The days that followed weren't easy. Healing never is. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, flashes of the old pressure creeping back. But there were also small victories, unplanned laughter, long conversations, the kind of silence that feels safe instead of empty. Kelly broke down as she described watching Mark rediscover pieces of himself he'd forgotten. "I see him breathe differently," she said. "I see him smile without forcing it." The farewell, once devastating, became transformative. She ended her confession with a message that resonated far beyond celebrity culture. If you're watching this and you're exhausted, if you're carrying everything alone, please know you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to justify it. Her voice trembled one last time. Love doesn't mean never falling apart. Sometimes it means holding each other while you do. When the cameras cut, Kelly exhaled, shoulders shaking. Mark was waiting backstage. He wrapped his arms around her, pressing his forehead to hers, grounding them both in the present. The farewell wasn't goodbye. It was a pause, a painful, necessary pause that saved something precious. And as fans around the world absorbed the truth behind Mark's tearful moment, one thing became clear. The bravest stories aren't always about staying strong. They're about knowing when to stop, step back, and choose each other. In the end, Kelly and Mark didn't lose anything. They found their way home.
Shocking new details have emerged as Kelly Ripa breaks her silence in an emotional confession that leaves fans heartbroken. The true reason behind Mark Consuelos' tearful farewell is finally exposed, and it's far more devastating than anyone imagined. Behind the smiles and spotlight lies a painful truth about love, sacrifice, and the moment everything changed. This powerful story reveals what really happened off-camera, why Mark made his heartbreaking decision, and how it forever transformed their lives. Fans won't be able to look away.